Okay, so good evening once again, everybody. To become a beekeeper from the Patchogue-Medford Library, we're here with Moira, and I'm going to pass it on to you. Thanks so much.
All right, so here we go. I always tell everybody when I begin a discussion that beekeeping is a journey. It's not a destination. It's something that evolves as your beekeeping years max out. And so it's an opportunity for you to meet a microcosm of people here on Long Island that are beekeepers. I am the programs director for the Long Island Beekeepers Club. Our club was started in 1947. Um, Currently, we have about 350 dues paying members, but I would guesstimate that on Long Island there are over 1,000 beekeepers. Our beekeepers range from doctors and lawyers. Isabella Rossellini, an actress. We have retired teachers, myself, ship captains. We have all kinds of different people that have been called by the hive to be their keepers. And you start off with an idea of what beekeeping is going to be, and then it morphs into something else. Um, a little background information: there are 30,000 bees in the world, and I'm going to use the term native bees. So each country or each continent has bees that belong to that land. Um, in the North America, we have 3,000 native bees that are part of our ecosystem. In the state of New York, we have about 434 native bees, but honeybees are not native. They were brought to this country on ships with early pilgrims. So they were brought to the colony, the early colony of the Massachusetts Bay colony and the Virginia colony. And they were brought by those people, those early settlers, because they brought with them their fruits and vegetables that they wanted to raise in this new world. And they knew that that had to be pollinated by honeybees. And so those hives were placed in barrels and they were iced. I want to say ice was placed around them to I simulate a kind of wintering condition so the bees wouldn't fly. And then they were carried off. And beekeeping was a very important position in the colony. As time went on, there weren't really beekeepers. There were people that would catch swarm catchers. And so bees would swarm and people would catch those swarms and bring them home and not only get honey, but get beeswax, which was very, very valuable back then, obviously for candles and lots of other different things. Fast forward, after, I want to say, as time goes on, instead of catching them and putting them in straw baskets, skeps, boxes were invented by Reverend, a means of keeping bees in a box that allowed us to examine, remove honey, but not disturb the bee's nest. And that was a Reverend Langstroth. And he was a minister in Pennsylvania. And that changed beekeeping forever. That simple invention, allowing us to move hives, allowing us to examine hives, because before that, hives were kept in baskets or in logs, and the health of the colony was impacted by lots of different diseases that had a heavy toll on beekeeping. So I'm going to start with my story. So, if I say that beekeeping is a journey, how did I begin? So I am a retired elementary school teacher, and When I was teaching fourth grade, I had Star of the Week, and one of the children brought in her grandfather on Thursday when we had VIP, very important person day, and he shared with us his passion and his love for beekeeping. He was a master beekeeper, and at the end of the presentation to the children, he talked about life cycles and members of the hive. He turned to me and said, you know, at that time I was Mrs. Jones, and he said, Mrs. Jones, all the beekeepers here on Long Island are old men. And I'm so afraid that beekeeping will die out. Do you want to be a beekeeper? And I said, no, I have two kids and I'm a single mom and dogs and lacrosse practice and a house and teacher. No, I don't want to be a beekeeper. Came back to my classroom 4 or 5 consecutive years and asked the same question. And finally I said, listen, when I get close to retirement, I'll think about it. I got remarried. And for those of us that have had second husbands, I asked my new second husband, I think I want to know more about this beekeeping thing. And he said, anything you want, honey. So our journey began with that simple statement. And for one whole year, Dave and I learned as much as we could before we invested a dime in buying equipment, or before we really became committed to it. We learned as much as we could. We joined the Long Island Bee Club. We became members. We hung out with beekeepers. We went to conferences. We read books. We went to meetings and just kind of sat in the back of the room, and a lot of different educational opportunities to learn about beekeeping. And then I finally turned to him and said, I think I want to be a beekeeper, Dave. And so that's where it started. It started in our backyard with 2 hives, and 2 multiplied to 4, and 4 went to 6. And now my husband passed away, going to be 8 years ago. And so we were a couple beekeeper. I worked the hives, but Dave did a lot of the work of maintaining the colonies and carrying honey and extracting. So when he passed away, I was really at a fork in the road as to how was I going to do this by myself. And I gotta say that the club members of Long Island Beekeepers really stepped up and supported me, making that transition from a couple beekeeper to a single beekeeper. I have done different things so that I can maintain my hives myself. I run during the summer about 24 colonies of bees in 5 different locations. I became a master beekeeper, which is an EAS, Eastern Apicultural Society master beekeeper. About 3 years, no, 4 years ago, I teach a beekeeping class to new beginner beekeepers, which is about an 8 months class. We meet once a month, and I educate them and support them on their journey to become beekeepers. So one of the things that I always tell new beekeepers, it's really important to know what you're getting into before you jump in to this hobby. And this is not a hobby that I am a quilter. And so when I don't quilt, everything gets put away, or it's under, it's in drawers or under my bed, or it's packed away until I want to do some quilting again. Bees are different. Being a beekeeper is a commitment of time, a commitment to something that is living. So I always say that it's less responsibility than bringing up children, or it's even less responsibility than a dog, having a pet dog or a cat. But there is time and money and energy and a commitment to know, to become a better beekeeper. Everybody makes mistakes, including myself. But it's on you as a potential beekeeper to learn from your mistakes so that you don't make them over and over again. So there are three different kinds of beekeepers. And so there is us, the hobbyist. I love the idea that they call it a hobby. It's more than a hobby. Um, it's you're considered a backyard beekeeper. So I have hives in my backyard. My apiary is in my backyard, and as the number of hives grew, I had people reach out to me and ask if I would keep hives in their locations. So I have hives at Honey Stop, Honey, and that's my dog. I have hives at Sweetbriar Nature Preserve. I have hives at Bethpage Golf Course. I have hives. I have an observation hive at um, no, I have an observation at Sweetbriar. I have hives at Hoyt Farm. I have hives at Nissaquag, and I have hives in Huntington. And another kind of beekeeper, and this happens to numerous people, is that the number of hives that they have increases and increases. So they go to a different type of keeping, and that is a sideliner. So I have a handful of friends here on the Long Island Beekeepers Club that are sideliners, meaning that they have a full-time job, but they run anywhere from 50 to 500 colonies in addition to their regular job. And so their commitment to their colonies or their hives um, obviously is much more. Um, a lot of those sideliners do pollination here on Long Island. Apple orchards are at the end of the island for fruits and vegetables. And the final type of beekeeper is a commercial beekeeper. And those are the beekeepers that travel throughout the country following fruit and vegetable blooms as the season changes. So those beekeepers usually run anywhere from 1,000 colony to 10,000 colonies, and their money, their what sustains them as an operation is not selling honey, but I want to selling contracts for pollination. So many of those beekeepers, commercial beekeepers, have just finished almond pollination, almond pollination out in California, out okay, out in California, which they received $150 per colony for their contract. So if they bring in a thousand colonies, the amount of money that they're earning is substantial. Um, uh, Another thing about this hobby is in terms of education. So one of the things for me is your level of understanding or your level of commitment to your bees is something that pushes you to learn more, to read more, to know more. So it is something that I would probably say that every beekeeper who is part of our club would say that they have, even though they might have, I have almost close to 15 years of keeping, I don't, there's so many things I still don't know. There's so many things for me to still master and understand. So that part of it, education wise, is a real important component to it. All right, a hobby, I want to make it sure it's specifically clear that you are not going to make so much money as a beekeeper selling your honey that you can retire from that. Or you can go and go on a trip from that. So the average jar of honey that you will sell here on Long Island is about $10 to $12. And so many of my students go through that period. I guess I want to liken it to being a fireman. So many of us, when there's a fire, run out of a building. And then, of course, we have those that are servicemen that run into a fire and are not fearful of that. You are going to work with stinging insects, but your fascination, your commitment to your hobby or commitment to this box of living insects will slowly, I want to say totally erase that fear. You have it in the beginning, but your fear of 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 being stung is something that changes, and so you're not worried about it or you're not obsessed by it. Remember that as a beekeeper, you're going to suit up, and you're going to wear protective gloves. Doesn't mean that you won't be stung, but I want to say if you suit up properly and wear protective clothing, the chances of you being stung are minimal. So the next thing is something that is important is, where does a beekeeper who wants to start colonies in their backyard, how do you go and get education for that? How do you begin to amass information that allows you to have a comfort level, so that when you start your hobby as a beekeeper, that you have a knowledge base, that you're secure in what you're doing? So probably the most important uh, component to your education is to become a member of the Long Island Beekeepers Club. And you can go online and type in the Long Island beekeepersclub.org, for those here, Long Island beekeepersclub.org, and you will go to our homepage, and there is a wealth of information to for you to begin to understand what beekeeping is about. So there talks about our club meeting, talks about different kinds of bees, talks about, I want to say, honey, talks about resources, talks about education. So our club meets on a monthly basis, once a month, the fourth Sunday of the month. It's about a 3-hour meeting. Our club dues are $35. Um, so it's about $3 a month, very kind of reasonable for a club. Um, we have, because of the COVID, we have been meeting online with Zoom meetings for our members. Come April, we will be meeting again outdoors, everybody socially distanced. So we will meet at the Pecamic Herb Farm, um, which is out east. And we have 3 speakers that will be addressing different topics that are timely for this time of year for beekeepers to to help beekeepers with what's happening in their hives. Um, if you're interested in our April meeting, you can go online and find out information. You do not have to join. You can just come and kind of like I did, sit in the back of the room and see what this is all about. So you're welcome to join us. Another kind of where you can amass education is Beekeeping Magazines. So there is 2 trade magazines that beekeepers read, and this one is called the American Bee Journal, and this is a monthly subscription, and in it is, I want to say, 20 to 30 different articles to help beekeepers, so that are beginners, intermediates, and those that have, I want to say, a higher level of understanding. So there's scientific articles in there. There's articles that will help you install a package. What kind of clothing do I need to buy? What happened, a question and answer section. What happened to my bees? I can't find my queen. What should I do? Another magazine is called Bee Culture, and it is also on the same kind of format. If they're about $24, they're about between $2 to $3 per magazine. Um, the subscription, I think, I've been getting it since I began beekeeping. And what I do is at the end of the year, I find some new beekeeper that doesn't have them, and then um, I want to say gift them to them. They're extremely helpful to new beginner beekeepers. Um, Another kind of educational tool is t- um, DVDs that lots of times libraries or our Long Island Beekeeper Club has for our members to borrow. And so you can take one out on queen rearing, or how to make a split, how to install a nuke. So there are DVDs that you can watch over and over again that will help you to understand different facets of your beekeeping skills. Another is mentors. So the Long Island Beekeepers Club has a meeting mentor program that when beekeepers come to our meetings, there are about 10 or 15 of us with experience with numerous colonies and educational levels. Most of us are master beekeepers, where we will talk to new beginner beekeepers and talk them through problems or situations that they might be having with their bees or their apiary. We also have a Facebook page, Long Island Beekeepers Club, where questions are posted, and we have somebody that answers them, and the same thing for our website. So beekeepers are able to access um, either beekeepers or information through our club. Um, um, College courses. And so there are quite a few colleges in the United States that now have begun to offer online programs to beekeepers. And so I'm sure a lot of people during their time where everyone stayed indoors and was limited to really being involved in the outside world, a lot of people might have tuned into a beekeeping class. And so the beekeeping classes that on college level, the University of Pennsylvania, University of Florida, University of Georgia, University of Montana, um, Cornell, all have classes and courses geared to your level. So they have a beginner's class, which is background, basic information to help you understand the bees in the hive, the biology, um, what it takes to um, become a beginner beekeeper, and so that you can keep your hives alive. And then there's an intermediate class that bumps your beekeeping skills to the next level. And then there is the master classes. And so my master certification, I didn't do that. It took me a long time to kind of convince myself that I was capable of, but I got to tell you, I hadn't studied that hard since I was in college. And so it was a 4-part test. So it was a written test. It was an in-hive test. It was a test of, I guess you had to, a test where you were asked on the spot to answer questions as if you were out in the public and the public was to ask you questions. Did your knowledge, was your knowledge such that you could answer specific questions about beekeeping? And then there was a test on, I want to say, a lab test. Um, it was hard. But bottom line, after passing all four of those sections, it took me 2 years. The first year, I only passed three of the four, and I had to go back for the part for speaking, to being able to answer questions. So there was a panel of beekeepers. Um, it is, so here I talked to you and talked about that concept of journey. uh, for me, I started out with just two hives, just like you would start out. And as time went on, my interest and my knowledge and my wanting to be a better beekeeper pushed me in a different direction. I have even written a children's book about bees, little bees that are house bees. Um, uh, we in the Long Island Beekeepers Club also have classes. And so in January and in February, we have a beginner's class and an intermediate class that helps our new club members that are starting their colonies in the month of April. And so next in 2 weeks, Long Island Beekeeper Club members, if they are buying bees, will be getting their bees from California. They'll be sent across, and from Florida and from Georgia. So bees cannot be produced here in the Northeast because of the temperature. So we get our bees from warmer climates or warm states that have warmer climates, and it allows us to install our package. And where everybody's keeping their fingers crossed that April 10th, the weather in California and the weather down in Florida and Georgia will be such that the bees will be able to be shipped up north and shipped across the country. So even though our bees are always dependent on weather and temperature for their success in the hive and being able to produce. And so the classes that we offer at the Long Island Bee Club covers history, beekeeping and equipment and diseases, um, installation of bees, swarming, honey removal, meaning extraction, and getting ready for fall. The next thing that you need to know is um, we live in suburbia. So you have to keep bees in such a way that you and your neighbors can coexist with bees in your backyard. One of the things that is most important is for you to know the beekeeping rules for your, I want to say, township. So Suffolk County, town of Babylon, town of Huntington, town of Smithtown, town of Brookhaven, um, and further east, there are no rules on any of their books against beekeeping. In Nassau County, probably I think the township that has the most rules is the town of Hempstead in Nassau. And um, we even though there are communities that allow beekeeping, if there was an issue between a neighbor and a beekeeper because the town overrules the this the town is overruled by the bigger group of uh, I want to say the bigger group. So if I was in Comac and there was a rule by the township of Smithtown, Comac said it would be okay, but the township said no, then I would have to remove my bees. Um, Most of us have no problem with our neighbors. Most neighbors are really kind of excited to support pollinators because I think the word is out how important they are. But you still, as a member of the Long Island Beekeeper, are responsible to take into consideration certain things when you become a beekeeper. So, on our books, we have the Good Neighbor policy. So, your hive openings, the hive itself must face, all our bees like to face southeast. I mean, but you want to face it in a certain way that I want to say if your beehives are going to be placed on your property line, and then they have to be at least 12 feet from your neighbor's property line. All right, so you need to look at your property and say to yourself, where can I place hives that it won't interfere with my neighbor enjoying his backyard? So for me, I have a half an acre. I have a smaller backyard. The hives in my backyard are in the middle of my property, not close to my property line. That allows me to face them southeast. I have a wooded backyard, but my hives are moved out of the shaded area so that the front of the boxes get the sunshine on them. For at least, I want to say, early morning to late afternoon. If you have no other place but to put your bees 10 feet from the property line, and there is no barrier between yourself and your neighbors, then it is your responsibility to create some kind of barrier. And a barrier can be, I want to say, plants or bushes or a fence. Bees, when they come out of a hive, do not fly in our I want to say working space. Bees come out of a hive and they angle up and they fly in the air about 20 feet above the ground. And when they return from a flight with nectar or pollen, same thing, 20 feet above the ground, and then they kind of angle into the hive. So by placing a barrier in front of the hive, if the hive is here, placing a barrier, it forces the bees to fly up and over, preventing them from going through a neighbor's property. Sources of water. You as a beekeeper, all living things need water, are responsible to provide water for beekeepers. Simple as bird baths or I want to say a pot of water that has stones in it that bees can land on the stones and put their tongues into the water. You want to provide water sources so that your bees don't fly to other water sources, meaning specifically pools. And so by you having on in my backyard, I think I had 7 or 8 different bird baths or watering systems. So I have a rock in which I have a hose that drips over. I have bird baths. I have them on pedestals. I have them on the ground. I have cement bird baths that allow bees to land on the cement and then kind of, I want to say, make a ring around the water source and head in. And then I have other bird baths where I put stones and pebbles in, allowing the bees to land. The number of hives that you have from the Long Island Good Neighbor policy is specific to your acreage. And so for a quarter of an acre, the Long Island Beekeepers Good Neighbor policy says not to have more than 4 colonies. So I have a half acre that allows me to have 8, right? Uh, the more colonies you have, the more intimidation that can be to your neighbors. And so where you place them, what colors you use to seal the wood. So my hives are this is a picture of my hive in my backyard. And they are a forest green and a raspberry color. And there is one of the bird bats. They are in the middle of a garden. So they are placed behind a barrier of flowers and low shrubs. And so I didn't paint them white. I wanted them to be part of the landscape. My girlfriend Grace stains her boxes, I want to say, beautiful wooden colors. And so in her backyard, again, and they don't stand out, they blend back into the landscape that they are placed. Um, uh, Gifts of honey. So this is always a question. Should I tell my neighbor that I am going to keep bees, or should I keep bees and then tell my neighbors? So I going to be honest with you. Dave and I kept bees for 3 years, and then we went with jars of honey and told our neighbors we were beekeepers. And because of the type of property I have and my location of where I kept it, I didn't walk around in my white bee suit in the front yard. I didn't, use my smoker and create a smoke bomb as I was working my bees. That my neighbors did not even know that we kept bees until we went with honey. So being respectful of your neighbor is really an important part of being a beekeeper. If you live in Nassau County and maybe you're in Locust Valley and you have 10 acres, I don't think you have to worry about your neighbors so much. But those of us in Suffolk County have to take into consideration um, uh, different pieces of uh, of how to work bees and um, and and keep your neighbor happy. And so as a backyard beekeeper, if my neighbor is going to have a party, in fact, the woman across the street, she has 4 little girls. She has 2 summer birthday parties. And so when she is going to have her birthday parties, I do other things in my hive to make sure that my bees are well fed and that they're not, I want to say, flying um, towards her property. I also, when she is having a party, and she does have bird baths and other kinds of things, and little kiddie pools, those things are, we dump out to make sure that bees will not access them during the party. So, right. Another thing, time involvement. So how much time is involved if you're a beekeeper? So my my beekeeping class uh, began their journey for education in September. They be coming on a monthly basis. So September, October, November, December, January, February, March, 7 months of education, book knowledge, I want to say reading, discussion, um, lectures, uh, assignments. I've given them videos to watch. Their bees are now coming in the month of April. They'll be working them April, May, June, July, August, September, October. So just about 7 months of working bees. As a new beginner beekeeper, I am going to tell you, you probably have to go into your hives once a week. You become a weekend warrior. Or Or maybe you have a day off during the middle of the week and you can work your bees then. After your first year of going in every single week and getting a sense of what you're looking for, how to work your bees, what you are seeing, what is interpreting what the bees are telling you by what they're doing in the boxes, your second year, you're probably going to go into your colonies once every 2 weeks. And so, time commitment wise, once a week, when you're in your colonies, if you have two colonies, you'd be in your hive for about 15 or 20 minutes examining brood boxes. That's where the queen lives. That's where she lays her eggs. That's where the bees are being, um, I want to say, born. That's where you are looking for the health of the next generation. So your examination is not about what's happening in your honey box. And once you can determine that that is everything is queen, the queen is there, your hive is queen, right? You close up your box and then you're back the following week. The first year, you will not harvest any honey. So, therefore, all the honey that the bees make is their food for them to survive the upcoming winter. I would like to say that beekeepers are robbers, kind of like bears. And so that we would steal the excess honey that bees have for ourselves, and then we jar it and sell it. Every hive must be left at like at least 60 pounds of honey. So if I have a hive that makes 80 pounds, I get 20. I have a hive that makes 100 pounds, I get 40. I have a hive that has, 40 pounds, I give them 20. And so the last year I had over 20 colonies, 10 hives produced enough honey for me to take and jar and sell. 10 hives had just enough honey for their survival over the winter, right? So it's not label intensive. Most of you will be able to order your equipment. It will be put together. You'll have to paint and you'll have to install a couple of things, but it's not something that you need woodworking skills. Beekeepers in the past used to make all of their own equipment. So April through October, one or two times a week, a month, you'll be going one time a week, or two times a month, you'll be going into the hive. November through March, the winter months, you will be, I don't know how to tell you, preparing for the spring again. It's what beekeepers do. So you'll be reading, you'll be Zooming, you'll be YouTubing, you maybe be taking conferences online. Hopefully, things will open up that we'll be able to have meetings again. You'll be painting, you'll be sanding your equipment, you'll be getting everything ready. So come April, everything is in good order for you to begin your beekeeping season again. Um, if you're going into your second year, harvesting honey, taking it out of the boxes, stealing it from the bees and bringing it to a basement or a garage where you're going to extract it, or your kitchen, that's about 1 day. Jarring your honey, putting your honey into jars for you to sell is about another day. So time commitment um, isn't as extensive as a lot of other hobbies. What do you need? So my recommendation that everybody needs is you need two hives. And the reason why I say you need two hives is the fact that if something happens in one hive, something goes wrong, you kill a queen, or maybe there is a pesticide issue where your bees went to a site and that somehow mosquito joes sprayed them and there was a kill off. you can take bees from one colony to help another colony. If you only have one colony and something happens, it leaves you without an opportunity to fix a problem. And so I say too, you're going to need the equipment, a smoker. And so a smoker is the tool that beekeepers use to calm and quiet their bees down. You're going to need the veil, the jacket that you wear so that you are protected when you go into go and examine your bees. And they come in lots of different varieties. So you can have a whole jumpsuit. You can wear a jacket that has a veil attached. You can wear just a veil itself. And so they're in the catalogs, the beekeeping catalogs, where equipment is uh, is for sale. You can price out, or you can make a wish list of the things that you need. You're going to need a bucket to put all your hive tools, the things that you will bring to the bee yard. You're going to need a bucket for you to have the fuels that you will use to start your smoker. So the buckets you can get at Home Depot or Lowe's. You're going to need a bench. Where are you going to? Now you're going to place them in your backyard, but what are you going to put them on? So there you can, if you go to a catalog, a beekeeper's catalog, they have hive stands that are fancy and a little bit on the expensive side. So my husband built, for lack of a better word, picnic benches that my hive sat on, wide picnic benches. Eventually, those after about 10 years rotted out because they were made of wood. And I keep all my bees now on cement blocks. You know, I think they're 250 cement block. I need three of them to create a stand for me to put my hive on, right? Then you're also going to need, I want to say, woodenware. Woodenware. And the woodenware is what the bees live in, right? So this is considered a hive, and a colony of bees live inside there. The boxes are, I want to say, able to be moved or cracked open for beekeepers to look inside to see how the bees are doing woodenware. Okay. Eventually, if you stay in the beekeeping, if you continue the hobby or beekeeping business, you'll need an extractor. So your extractor is a big investment. The Long Island Beekeeping Club provides for our beekeepers a hand crank, a small extractor for beekeepers in their beginning years to borrow to make sure that this is the hobby for them before they invest in that. Um, where are you going to keep all this stuff? Where are you going to keep your boxes and your equipment um, and your tools and your smoker? And so that really depends on you. So in my beekeeping journey, I've had it in a shed, and then I wasn't happy with how it overwintered in a shed. The shed was a plastic shed. Then I had it in a wooden shed, and that was fine. But it was kind of far away from the hives that I had in the backyard. Then I had it in my basement, and that meant me going up and down the stairs all the time. And so finally, I have taken half of my double car garage and turned that part of my garage into a bee she shed, if I want to call it. So all of my equipment is kept there. So that's another thing to think about. Okay, if I get into this, where will I keep this? And so I wasn't allowed to use the garage because at one point Dave had a collector's car in there, so the garage was his. And so when the car was sold, I had access to the garage and thought of it as a great place for me to keep everything. You're also going to need ways to store things. So you need a place and now ways to store it. I like to keep everything in clear plastic bags. So after I use something and clean something, I put it in a clear plastic bag. So come the winter or come the spring and I need something, I'm not saying is it in this bag or where is it? All right. So it allows me to look in. I have clear plastic storage containers that allow me to see, and if something has to be airtight. I also have um, I want to say Ziploc bags, a lot of different kinds of ways to keep your your equipment from being accessed by, if I keep it in the garage, there are other things that might come into my garage that might damage my equipment since it's not in my house, right? Um, I moved my equipment from place to place to place because the amount of equipment that I had continued to grow. So you need to think about that also. Yes, I can keep it in this shed, maybe the corner of a shed, but as your equipment or as the number of colonies grows, you might need a bigger space just to think ahead. How much does this cost? So my brother had, I don't know, a big old boat. And every time he would fill his gas tank, he used to give me a hard time, like, oh, how much does this beekeeping equipment stuff cost? Yeah, a lot of money. So I looked at startup costs as something that, so when my students come to me, I will tell them to order equipment in pieces, not to wait to the month of March and order everything, because then that's a lot of money going out the door at the same time. So my students are told to order, I want to say their woodenware in November or December before the prices go up. They're told to order their smoker and their hive tool and their outfit, their beekeeping outfit, and the next month, so that the price of this hobby is not one big chunk. If you are doing the year in advance, you can, instead of having a Christmas club bank account, you can have an account where you start to put money away. So your hive and your smoker and your outfit and the woodenware that you need and the frames that go inside that the bees build their foundation, their beeswax on, comes to about $500, right, per colony. So if you do it monthly, $150 a month. If you have a partner in crime, so lots of my beekeeping students are, well, I have three families. I have a couple of couples, boyfriends and girlfriends, so they're getting in this together. And then I have uh, friends where the responsibility, the financial responsibility is shared. So that's another thing that you can think of. Once you buy the woodenware, once you buy your outfit, once you buy your frames, you are not investing in this again if you are going to have two colonies and stay at two colonies. You're not investing in this again. So your initial outlay for the first year is pretty expensive, but after that it goes down or it's minimal. Remember, I said you're not going to get rich selling honey. One of the benefits, I can't even tell you, the benefits of becoming a beekeeper are so numerous. So for me, I have traveled to maybe 10 different states going to conferences. So, been places I would have never traveled to. I have met amazing people and have formed friendships along the way. And I talked about the support system for me once I lost my husband. I have, there isn't a single party that I can think of that I go to where someone finds out that I am a beekeeper and I become the center of attention talking about my hobby as a beekeeper and what that's about. Um, Allergy. And so if you are someone that has allergies, becoming a beekeeper and eating your own honey can be something that can change your the affect you have from pollen by ingesting honey which has pollen and change your health around dramatically. So I have quite a few of my customers that buy honey from my stoop that talk about, especially their children, that they no longer have to go to allergists and get shots or take medicine, that they have a spoonful of honey starting early in the fall, straight through the winter, so that when pollen starts to blow in the wind, that the kids' reaction to that is much less. Um, One of the big parts of being a beekeeper is your advocating, being somebody that talks to other people about the importance of a pollinator. One small, teeny tiny bug and their impact on our food sources and we take for granted. So one of the things that we take for granted when I was a kid, so I'm in my I just turned 70. So one of the things that when I was a kid, there was a corn on the cob season and a blueberry season and a watermelon season. And when that season for growing that vegetable was over, that was the last time you saw that fruit or vegetable until the following year. Because of the way all of the world is connected through trade, we can have blueberries and corn on the cob and cantaloupes and strawberries and raspberries on December 23rd if we want, if we're willing to pay the money. And that is also because of the pollination of our bees. And so that connection that you're part of something that is bigger than you is a great feeling. And you learn, probably I'll close with, you learn to love this bug. You learn to be in awe of what happens inside that hive. You learn to appreciate, absolutely appreciate how hard a colony of bees work as one to um, uh, to sustain themselves through the seasons and winter. It is an amazing, amazing event, and you are part of that. So for 6 hours today, before I before I turned on this, I was in the bee yard. And again, there isn't a single time that I open up a colony that I'm not truly amazed. This is the end of March, and my bees have been in their hive since November, December, January, February. They began flying the beginning of March. My queen, and we remember how cold it was, started laying eggs in January. I opened up 3 of the 4 colonies in the backyard, and I have 4 boxes of brood, meaning that I have 4 boxes of bees that are ready to hatch, ready to go out and collect nectar to turn into honey. And so liability. Um, you can get insurance. Um, one of the things that I talk to my students about is the importance of having an EpiPen in case you are allergic to bee stings, honeybee stings. So yellow jackets, hornets, and wasps all have venom, and all of their venoms are different. And you might be allergic to yellow jackets, but not to others. My mom was highly allergic to honeybees. And of course, she used to say, "You got those honeybees, so I can't come to your house." And I used to laugh. And my deck is in my backyard. It doesn't mean that because I have my hives in my backyard, I don't get to entertain or use my backyard. So if you are a good beekeeper, your bees and your neighbors and yourself can coexist and really create an amazing thing. So I don't know if anybody has questions that they would like to ask. I know that I don't know if they were going to be typed in or not, and then read to me or not. So is there anybody that has a question?
I don't see anything in the chat box yet, but feel free.
Lisa? So what was anybody? So what? So let me close with. So it's just about time, but let me close with some amazing bee facts. So a colony of bees. Right now, the hive that I went into today that has 4 boxes of brood. Those are bees that are waiting to be born. Has about 15,000 bees in it. By the end of summer, there will be about 50,000 bees in that colony.
Wow.
Um, it takes 60,000 worker bees and about 200 to 300 drone bees to create a colony with one queen. The queen is the mother of every single bee in that hive. And every 60 days, every single bee in that hive is new. So the lifespan of a honeybee is 20 days to go from an egg that the queen lays to being born. And once they hatch, they stay inside the hive for 20 days and they become what's called a house bee and do all jobs inside the hive. And their last 20 days of their life is when they fly out and collect the nectar and honey. So,
Right. We do
and
have a
it
question.
takes,
Somebody wants to know if you can recommend a source of where to get the actual bees.
so the actual bees, there's a couple of different ways beekeepers can make colonies. I talked about the idea that beekeepers are buying a box of bees and one queen in it. So you get a container, and it's a wooden box or a plastic box, and in there is one mated queen and 10,000 workers, and they are put in that box by I want to say uh, bee package producers, and those are those big commercial beekeepers that are now going to take their bees, and what they do is they take bees from their hives, shake them into a big drum, and they take a vacuum and they suck up the bees and put it into a box. And the box is on a scale. When it says 3 pounds, they stop and they slide that down. They insert a queen that's in a little plastic cage into that box. They slide it down the assembly line. They add a can of sugar syrup, like sugar water. That's their traveling food. And they slide it down and then they put a top on that. And then those bees are loaded up on flatbed semi trucks, and they come across the country. So April 10th and a company called Man Lake in Pennsylvania will be receiving 10,000 packages of bees, and beekeepers from the Northeast will be descending on that place, and they have ordered and paid for their bees. A package of bees goes for about $170, and you will pay and you bring your package of bees home and install it into your hive. And that happens the same thing from California. And then bees come up from the south, from Georgia. Yeah, and so you have a beekeeper that will go down to a commercial guy, load up a truck with a couple of hundred, not Man Lake um, brings them by the truckload. Most of the beekeepers that bring packages up of bees bring them up a couple hundred. And so in their back of their truck, and they have again been purchased by beekeepers in the north that can't, because bees can't fly out of their homes unless it's over 50 degrees. So anybody else?
Okay. Do you have any experience with mason bees?
Say it again.
Do you have any experience with mason bees?
I'm sorry, I'm having a hard time hearing you.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah, I hope.
Okay. Do you have any experience with mason bees?
Well, amazing bees, no, I don't. But one of the places that I keep my bees, which is Hoyt Farm, they have worked extremely hard in establishing a native pollinator garden. And they have in their native pollinator garden all kinds of plants and habitats for native bees to build homes. Native bees, like I said, there are numerous native bees here in the state of New York. Native bees are different from honeybees. So honeybees are social. They live in large groups. And jobs are divided amongst the bees that live within the colony. I want to say native bees live in very small groups. Their lifespan is extremely small. Their capability of going to flower sources is very, very limited. So native bees have a distinct disadvantage over a disadvantage in being able to uh, reproduce or being able to sustain themselves in a habitat. Most native bees are ground dwellers. And so, what do most homeowners do? They apply pesticides,
Yeah,
they apply
seed
all
their
kinds
lawn.
of things to their ground,
Yeah.
their grass. And so on my front yard, I have quite a few teeny tiny little bees that are out for 2 weeks. And they are, I'm trying to think of their name, but their lifespan is so short. One of the neighbor that across the street has them, and she gets very upset and has the landscaper come and put something down on her property that kills them. But the reality of the situation, if she just let them live those 2 weeks, they would lay, their whole purpose is really to prepare for the next generation, to propagate so that the next generation comes up in springtime, right? So um, there's a big movement. If you want to see something that is totally amazing, Bethpage State Park has a pollinator garden around their picnic field that has been created by their head operas there, that I've never seen anything like that. That did not exist 5 years ago. He started it 100 feet, planting 100 feet at a time, and he keeps on adding all kinds of different uh, uh, floral sources for native pollinators, and it is an absolute proof that if you plant the right flowers, they will come. If you go and buy your flowers from Home Depot or Lowe's, or maybe you buy them from supermarkets, I want you to, next time you go and buy, I want you, it's an outdoors, I want you to look around and see how many bees are there. And if there's not a lot of bees, what is that saying to you? That the flowers that they have in those outdoor facility are not attracting bees.
That
So
makes
there is part of their decision making is they bring in flowers that when people are walking around are not intimidated by bees. So if you want to help native pollinators, if you want to help my honeybees, you can go to a nursery and you might not know what flower I should buy. What flower should I buy? What's the name of it? All you have to do is walk around, and when you see bees on a flower, that's the one you bring home. That's the one you bring to your garden, because the bees are telling you this is this is a food source for me. This is nectar for me, or this is pollen for me. So when I go plant shopping, I let the bees tell me which ones. And I go in springtime, I go late spring, I go early summer, middle of the summer, late summer. So I am constantly buying flowers that are coming into bloom and are food sources. So I don't have, you know, I want to say if I crocus, I have lots of crocus, but that is a short lived. My bees are getting pollen from it, but then it dies and that food source is gone.
right.
My bees fly in a 2 mile radius. So my bees leave my property. 2 mile radius means that they cover 8,000 acres in their search for food. So when I am choosing plants, I'm not choosing for my honeybees because my honeybees can go someplace and get it and bring it back. I am choosing plants for native bees because I want to be inclusive and bring native bees to my land to support, to support them, because Long Island has created a lot of big pieces of green deserts, lawns, and there's
Right.
nothing there. Nothing. I don't know when dandelions became, the most hated flower of the land, but there used to be a point when I was a kid, we made dandelion necklaces and headpieces, and now they don't stand a chance. And that's the first food source, pollen for my bees. So, you know, let a dandelion hang for a while, and then you can go around and snip it, or snip it, or find a different way without pesticides to eliminate it.
Right. Okay, and our last question is, how are your pets with the bees?
Say it again.
How are your pets, your dogs? How are they with the bees?
Oh, so I have um there are dogs that are definitely bee yard dogs. And so lots of the commercial guys, or the guys that run hives, um, their dogs will jump in their bee trucks and go to the bee yard. I have two dogs. So I have a little one, Honey. Yeah, it's a beekeeper. So she's a Shih Tzu Griffon mix. And so she's low to the ground. When she goes out on the lawn in the backyard, if there are bees on the grass drinking water early in the morning, she's had her belly stung. She's not a fan of bees. My other dog is a medium sized dog, and she has long hair. So she's had an experience where a bee, not going to sting her, just flew by, and, her tail was wagging and the bee got caught in her tail. So both my dogs are not fans of bees. but there are plenty of people whose dogs are not bothered. So when I work my bees in my backyard, my dogs are not hanging in my bee yard with me. So, stinging wise, um, both my dogs have been stung. Bee has actually even lapped up water and got stung on her tongue, and no reaction. Sometimes dogs will swell up if they get stung on their face, will swell up, but they're pretty much in terms of an anaphylactic uh, reaction to that. I have not heard of a dog that has been hurt by that. So, yeah.
Good. Okay. Well, this was very informative. Thank you so much for your time. Thank you,
And
everybody, for
again,
tuning
if
in.
anybody is interested, wants to go to the next small step, the Long Island Beekeepers Club is your next step. And from there, I want to say you'll be introduced to other beekeepers. And from there, your journey can springboard. So if I say it's a journey, mine began as a teacher, yours might begin with this Zoom program. So it was really nice. Thank you so much for to the library for having me. I appreciate the opportunity to talk to all of you about my passion.
Thank
Beekeeping.
you. And I
Thank
did put the website and the your Facebook page information in the chat. So if anybody wants to take a look at that. And thank you so much, everybody. Be
you.
safe and have a
Thank
great
you.
day.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.